There's one thing you must do if you want to attract wealth and abundance into your life. Think you have an idea of what that is? Maybe right now you're thinking the law of attraction, or rubbing elbows with the right people. Or maybe you're thinking that you can create your own luck by working hard and getting a good education. But the truth is, it's none of those things. In fact, when I scour the internet for ways to become wealthy, not one of them mentions this one thing. Even though this thing I'm talking about, the key to getting rich beyond your wildest dreams, isn't something you need to go on a journey across the globe to find. You can't buy it from any internet guru. And last I checked, none of the wealth experts on TV are talking about it. Instead, this one thing is actually inside of you right now. And until a rogue NASA scientist revealed a secret experiment to me at a dimly lit dive bar in Houston, Texas, I didn't realize how powerful this one thing was either. But this thing that's inside of you right now is capable of making you as wealthy as you want to be. It's true, but here's the catch. You simply need to activate this thing I'm talking about. Think you know what it is? I would be thoroughly surprised if you did, because I'd never heard of this one thing until the day I discovered the secret NASA experiment. But now I realize that science is now confirming what ancient Eastern teachings have touted for centuries. That if you activate this one thing inside you, that you can attract money and wealth effortlessly. And that every human being on planet Earth has the power to do so. Now, I get that you might be a little skeptical. After all, it sounds a little too easy. But just watch this short video to the end today, and you'll see why this one thing has the power to change the very course of your life. And in fact, it has already done so for myself and for thousands of others across the globe. Since I'm about to share a very personal and humiliating story with you, allow me to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Alex Maxwell, and I never thought I'd find myself in the position to write this letter to you. Because while I'm rich beyond my wildest dreams today, I was broke for just about my entire adult life. If you've ever felt like you were on a financial hamster wheel, you know what I'm talking about. Feeling like you can never get ahead. Always working your butt off just to keep your head above water. And if you're like me, you've tried anything and everything to get off that hamster wheel. Studying the law of attraction, which didn't do anything for me. Selling Amway or essential oils or whatever, only to find out that those things are one big pyramid scheme. I also worked 2 jobs for a long time thinking I'd get ahead, but something always came up that would keep me broke. A car repair here, an unexpected fee there. You know how it goes. But no matter how exhausting it was, I kept chugging along, sacrificing every spare moment I had to try and build a better life for my family. Look, sometimes being a good dad is a thankless job. No one ever seems to notice or care that we give and never take time to take care of ourselves. Truth is, no one wants to hear a man complain about how tired he is or how he's struggling with his mental health, just the way our culture is. But I was always happy to keep grinding as long as I could take care of my family. But then, one February, I hit rock bottom when my manhood was snatched away from me. You see, just a few years ago, I couldn't even afford to buy my youngest daughter, Alexis, anything for her birthday. She was turning 5 that year and wanted a bicycle more than anything in the world. But I had to choose between the bike she wanted or paying the heat bill, and the heat bill won. It was humiliating enough to try and beg and borrow the money before her birthday arrived. But in the end, it was my older daughter Jenny's 16-year-old boyfriend who ended up fronting the cash, just so I could afford to buy a kid's bike at Walmart and avoid crushing my little girl's heart on her special day. And if that weren't humiliating enough, the conversation I heard between him and my daughter was a dagger to my heart. When we get married and have kids, I'll never let this happen. We won't be poor like your dad, and I sure as hell won't be borrowing money from a 16-year-old waiter. I'm going to be a real man. The worst part is that he was right. I mean, what kind of man can't provide for his family? I can tell you at that moment that I didn't feel like a man. And it was right then and there I vowed to get myself out of the crummy financial situation that I was in. The thing is, I tried everything I could think of to pull myself up by my bootstraps. Not knowing what to do, I decided to go for a drive. For whatever reason, I decided to go to a local dive bar and just be alone. After downing a couple $2 Bud Lights, I couldn't help but notice one guy at the end of the bar. He kept pulling a piece of paper out and putting it back in his bag over and over again. And every time, he'd just shake his head and rub his face wearily. Now, I'm not sure if it was the universe, God, or some weird energy, but something told me to go sit and chat with this guy. So I walked over and introduced myself, and he told me his name was Jim. I could tell he'd had quite a few drinks, and it smelled like the hard stuff, too. Next thing I know, the conversation was flowing, and we were chatting like old buddies. I was starting to feel pretty good from the beer, so I ended up spilling my guts to him about my whole humiliating day. Well, apparently things weren't going much better for him. He told me he'd recently been fired from his job, but he also didn't seem too worried about it. When I asked him where he got fired from, he got all weird and said that it wasn't important. As the conversation went on, I noticed he kept glancing over at his bag. Finally, I worked up the nerve to ask him about it. "Hey man, what's that paper you keep taking in and out of your bag? Really seemed to have you worked up." Jim's eyes suddenly got really big, and I could almost sense fear coming off of him. "Are you from the government?" he asked, seemingly irritated. I assured him that I wasn't, but that curiosity just had gotten the best of me. Then Jim looked around the room, leaned in, and lowered his voice. "Look, man, I got fired from NASA. All because I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Something that could transform both of our lives. Look, let me start from the beginning." Jim told me an incredible story about his last days as a scientist at NASA. He told me one night he was working late when he stumbled across some documents that were left out. And that's how he discovered NASA had a secret they were hiding from the public. The funny thing is, I always thought NASA worked for the public. But truth is, most of their funding comes from private parties. Billionaires, of course. And that's how this secret experiment came about. You may have even heard about it. It's pretty famous and got lots of media coverage. It's when NASA sent up one of two identical twins into space for a year. That part was made public, but the real reason for the experiment was kept a secret. And this secret holds the key to becoming rich beyond your wildest dreams. All because a few billionaires were obsessed with chakras and suspected there was a way to activate the root chakra, which is supposed to be the chakra responsible for attracting wealth. The crazy thing is, the secret experiment proved that they were right. This basically means that science is now proving what ancient spiritual leaders have known for centuries. And the biggest thing holding us back from discovering this sooner is that scientists and spiritual leaders were getting chakras and DNA confused with one another. Now pay close attention because this next part is key. Here's the thing. New studies have shown that humans only use 8% of their DNA, which means there's still a whopping 92% of your DNA that is unused. Mainstream scientists refer to this as junk DNA. But the truth is, this is not junk DNA. This is simply DNA that hasn't been activated yet. And the experiment sending the identical twin Mike Kelly to space proved that you can activate your DNA. In fact, it spawned a whole new scientific phenomena that's becoming more and more mainstream. It's called epigenetics, which is just the scientific term for changes that happen to your body when certain genes are either activated or deactivated. So at this point, it's been scientifically proven that you can, in fact, activate DNA. And thanks to the NASA experiment, we now know that 92% of DNA that scientists used to call junk DNA isn't junk DNA at all. It's just DNA that's waiting to be activated. Makes sense, right? Why would our bodies have all this DNA if we could only use 8% of it? But here's the part that nobody's talking about. Our DNA is really just a fancy scientific term for our chakras. Now, in case you don't know what chakras are, they're just energy centers inside your body. There are 12 total, even though many people only talk about the 7 main ones. Humans have known about chakras, our energy centers, since at least 500 BC. And knowledge of chakras has gained popularity in modern times, mostly thanks to the emergence of yoga. But what almost no one is talking about is our original 12 strands of human DNA, connecting to our 12 chakra points. You see, there are really 2 types of DNA, physical DNA and spiritual DNA. And the simplest way to put it is chakras are our spiritual DNA. Now, why is this important? Because chakras, our spiritual DNA, is where our wealth DNA is located. And the secret NASA experiment proved that we could activate this spiritual DNA. Now, I don't know if you know anything about chakras, but as I mentioned a second ago, it's commonly been believed for centuries that the root chakra is responsible for wealth. Well, science is now proving what Eastern teachings have been saying since at least 500 BC, that we do, in fact, possess wealth DNA. It just hasn't been activated in 99% of humans alive today. But if you are able to activate your wealth DNA, as the secret NASA experiment proves is possible, you will never have to worry about money again. It will just flow into your life effortlessly. And it will almost feel like a higher power is sending you amazing money-making opportunities that involve little to no work. Now, on the surface, it'll seem like a coincidence most of the time. But eventually, you recognize that there's something else at work here. Right around that time, I started putting two and two together. I said to Jim, so we humans possess a wealth gene in our spiritual DNA, and it just needs activating? And now scientists have proven that we can do just that. So it's possible to activate our wealth DNA, which is the same thing as opening up our root chakra? Jim looked me in the eye and smiled. God, I can only imagine what kind of crazy scientific procedure it would take to pull that off, I said as I was staring off into space. But Jim told me I'd be surprised at how simple it is. The crazy part about it is the technology is loosely based around Gregorian chants from the 9th century. And actually, its basis goes even further back than that. Way back when, there was a Greek philosopher named Pythagoras, and he used to prescribe music as medicine. He referred to it as sacred geometry. Now keep in mind, this was back before the birth of Christ. And even today, many shamans are known for using music in their ceremonies. Why? Because the sound vibrations from music are able to change our gene expressions. In other words, we can harness the power of sound to activate dormant DNA. What's funny is it took NASA billions of dollars to prove what ancient Eastern spiritual leaders already knew, that we can activate our wealth DNA through the power of sound waves, which kind of makes sense when you think about it, because we all know about the power of vibrations, which is what shapes everything in the entire universe. Heck, it really makes the famous Nikola Tesla quote hit home. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla. Because right now, your root chakra is not vibrating at the frequency that it should be. And that's what's preventing wealth and abundance from flowing to you. The truth is, the way our chakras, or our energy centers, vibrate affects what we attract. Low vibrations equals negative people, lack of opportunities, and an overall lack of abundance. High vibrations equals positive people, opportunities falling into your lap like it's nothing, a steady flow of abundance and wealth. Okay, so we know that music, or more importantly, the sound waves that music produces, can activate our spiritual DNA, which is really just a scientific term for chakras. And our wealth DNA is one type of spiritual DNA, meaning we should be able to activate our wealth DNA with some sort of music. Jim nodded his head. He assured me NASA has proven it's possible. But obviously he hadn't been able to figure out how yet. Right then, Jim pulled out the page of notes he'd gotten from the NASA scientists. While he knew it talked about a certain frequency that the music needs to be at, the notes were written in code, so he doesn't know what the frequencies are, or really anything else it said. So while he witnessed the whole thing go down, and he knew it worked, he had no idea where to go from there. After Jim told the last part about the code and being stuck, it felt like all the air was sucked out of the room. I felt deflated. I'd just gotten all worked up over this, and now we're at a dead end because it's written in code? But then it hit me, because I suddenly thought of my nephew. He was a bright young man who served as a military intelligence officer in the Army. But the kicker was he recently transitioned to a job at the FBI as a code breaker. The coincidence seemed a little too crazy, but I just took it as a sign from the universe that I should act on this. I told Jim about the amazing coincidence and asked him if he was comfortable having my nephew decode the notes for us. After all, what was the point of having this document if we couldn't understand it? Jim didn't hesitate to jump at the opportunity. 2 days later, we met up with my nephew at a coffee shop in town. When Jim and I told him about the secret NASA experiment and the whole part about our wealth DNA, he was skeptical, to say the least. But he took a copy of the notes home and promised